gotta get focused. Okay, if you would introduce yourself, David, and then I'll introduce these folks.
Okay, well I'm David Boyce. I'm an artist from Hong Kong. I work with photography, obviously, as my main medium, and I do work with a range of cameras, and one of them is a Holga, which I've been using for a long-term project on my relationship with the Chinese language and my inability to read a lot of Chinese. So the works here, which this is part of a series of, are about or influenced by things like Chinese literati painting, where the aesthetic of the painting and the aesthetic of the poem that goes with the painting has to be both visual and oral. So when they wrote the poem down the side, it had to look good as well as sound good. So I took that as a sort of as an inspiration to try and look at a way of coming up with a visual language sort of idea about my inability to read Chinese and being a stranger in a strange land. So I've been working on this project now probably 2 years.
Wow. Okay. Let me tell you who these folks are. They are in a class that I teach at NYU that's called essentially From Beginning Photographer to Exhibiting Artist. This is their 5th session of a 12-week course, and at the 11th session they have their own solo shows here.
Right.
So they're on a journey. They could have, some of them started, went in the first class, they've already been taking pictures for years, others never had a camera before.
Right.
What advice can you give them?
Technique is the least important part of photography or art in any way. I was recently marking a whole lot of MFA final projects, and the thing that I found the most frustrating was the over-reliance on technique and at the expense quite often of the person's internal vision. So I think that technique's important, but the ideas that you want to express and the personal things that you want to do are quite often, a good idea will overwhelm bad technique. Good technique will never make up for a bad idea. I think it was Ansel Adams possibly who once said, "I've seen far too many sharp photographs of a fuzzy concept." So just really think about what you're doing, think about what you want to say in your work, and find the thing within you that makes that good. And it doesn't have to be a sharp, beautifully composed image. Sometimes the slightly damaged thing is the best thing. And chance and randomness are wonderful, wonderful things to have along with you when you're working. So that's probably what I would say.
Brilliant. I think that's the right thing to say. Absolutely. Anybody have a question?
So you prefer objects in your photos than people?
Yes. Yeah, objects tend not to talk back, and they tend not to complain when they look at the image later that you left too many freckles in. But I do portrait work. I've been doing a longish term for about the last 18 months project with a friend of mine who's he teaches sculpture. He's more just into making sculptural works, but we've been doing a series of works which we call affective portraits, where we sort of take that 70s, 80s family studio portrait thing with the awful backgrounds and the cheesy sort of
matching clothes.
Yeah, matching clothes and that sort of that horrible cookie cutter smile that everybody has. And we've gone through various things to actually get people to generate different emotions. Things like sadness or ecstasy or anger or grief by doing things and that's been quite fun. We've exhibited it twice now, once in LA and once in Hong Kong. But yeah, no, I do take photographs of people, but not as much as I probably do things that are more inanimate. Yeah.
I'm assuming that your camera wasn't, I know it was a crappy camera, that wasn't the size of the film though, or was it?
Yeah.
So it's like, it'll always take pictures of that dimension.
That's a contact plate on one roll of 120 film. Oh. So what I do is I just sort of take 12 photographs and move that. Some of them, this was a very deliberate one.
Yeah.
I thought very deliberately about having a symmetry. And this is where chance is quite interesting. I've been reading about Renaissance painters, and how if you look at Renaissance paintings, if you know what you're looking for, you'll see a portrait of a painter and maybe his assistants in there somewhere in the crowd scene. So you'll see them in there. So this is the portrait of me, which is where my foot comes. I discovered this in some of my photographs. Initially I didn't like it, but now I'm starting to, sometimes I get a little bit of my shadow into some of them or something like that. So it was a chance thing that this happened, but that sort of sounds
I like that. I like a part of it.
It's like adding your signature.
There's about 30 or 35 of these in the series now. So some of them more just sort of like just very quickly moving the camera around over sports grounds generally because of the sort of the calligraphic shapes you can get from it. And I've done some with graffiti as well, but haven't quite worked as well. I think I need to do some more on it. And the latest thing has been actually running them together, not winding the film completely, which is moving into a different sort of area, which is more about movement and rhythm as opposed to language. So yes, the short answer is yes, that is the actual size of the film. So,
Okay. Thank you so really. And thank you for coming all this way to be able to share.
Well, yeah, several things happening, and I've got friends with work and various things to do with things like the armory and Volto and moving image, and I had whole endpoints that had to be used up. So it's all worked together really well. Yeah. And New York, we can pass up an excuse to come to New York.
There we go.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Okay,
you.
thank you, David.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Thank you.